You are listening to the Marketing 32 Show with your host, Brett Allen.
Welcome to the Marketing 32 Show. This is Brett Allen. I'm your host, where I connect with leading dentists, dental influencers, and industry experts to uncover the latest strategies, insights, and innovations that help dental practices grow and thrive. This episode today is brought to you by our team here at Marketing 32. We're the only dental marketing agency that I know of that has a performance guarantee and is fully invested in your growth with our practice impact formula. So you grow or you don't pay. We focus on internal and external marketing strategies to find missed opportunities and generate growth for your practice. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest, Dr. Martin Mendelson. He is the brains behind Metamorphosis Coaching, where he turns chaos into cohesion with his powerhouse TEAM team approach. We're going to go into that today. With nearly 20 years of coaching and a knack for making leadership fun, he's here to help you lead smarter and not harder in your dental practice. So, Martin, thank you for coming on the show today. Excited to have you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And today's a big day for you, right? We're celebrating some big news for you, a new book potentially.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I can't believe this is the first time these words are coming out of my mouth on a recording, but I'm going to be published by Morgan James, which is a pretty big publishing house out of New York. It should be out within about 6 to 8 months of the recording. So late Q3, early Q4 of 2025.
That's exciting. Super exciting. Congratulations on that. I guess we'll probably cover some things that are in that book today, hopefully. But I guess before we get into team and how you got into leadership training, let's go deeper on your story a little bit. You were in dentistry and now you're in leadership training. Walk us through your journey.
Yeah, there was, just a couple decades between the two, but I actually started at 16 years of age in a dental practice, and they actually made me wear white pants even after Labor Day, but that's another topic. And so I went to dental school, never imagined anything different because I was that weird kid in high school, like Hermie from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I want to be a dentist. And off I went. But about 10 years in, I started having problems with my hand. And without going through the details, within about 6 to 8 months of that initial symptom, I was out. I was out of the practice of dentistry for good. I was actually misdiagnosed. That's another story. But I had carpal tunnel and cubital tunnel surgery in my hand and elbow. And it didn't work because that wasn't the cause. And I was out. And so I sat at home for 17 months, actually maybe a little longer. And so this was 2003 before there was Google. So go try to find a job when you're in your late 30s where you're too young for some, too old for others, too inexperienced for some. It was a nightmare. It was trauma and defined trauma that I learned later from therapy. And I got lucky. I ended up, through a connection, getting a job at a dental lab. So I was the liaison between the dental and the dentist in the laboratory for several years, facilitated the conversation of, you ready, 16,000, yes, I counted, outbound cases about questions they had, questions we had. Then certain things happened, and believe it or not, I lost my job because of a lab acquisition. I wasn't the only one. And then I worked for Vita in North America, the Shade Guide people, and I ran key opinion leader and education all across North America. And that's where I really started to hone my business acumen, because I was responsible for, at one point, a team of over 20 people, budgets of tens of millions of dollars, and I had to learn real quick. Fast forward about 5 years in, a wonderful experience. I got an opportunity to join Spear Education in its early days as an executive vice president and resident faculty. And I helped grow the study club organization to what it is today. The faculty club was the host of the summit for over a decade.
Wow.
And during that tenure and what I needed to do in helping to begin what ended up being called customer success, I felt like I needed to be better. So I started going down a road of executive coaching, team facilitation, certifications, emotional intelligence, and happiness studies, which was a year-long course that today is actually an accredited master's, not just a certification.
Oh, wow.
And so I've taken all of this together to help serve dentists, their teams, and leaders in other areas, because I'm not solely focused in dentistry, although majoritively, to help people understand that the biggest roadblock that gets in their way is them,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
kind of leads us into our team framework. So,
Yeah, I find that constantly. I am the biggest bottleneck of the business. I get
mhm.
a lot or slow
Yep.
things down. So if I can remove myself and properly assign things out to people, it gets done way better and faster than I ever could. Uh,
Yeah.
well, let's talk about that. So for practice owners, business
Mhm.
owners,
Yeah.
these two mindsets of clinician, entrepreneur, and managing teams. What is the acronym TEAM? What is team? What is this about?
It really goes to the heart of who we are as human beings, because at the end of the day, everybody in a dental practice is a human being. And we come to the table with different backgrounds, educational levels, senses of value, senses of purpose. And so team stands for thoughts that drive action, the thoughts that drive emotions, that drive actions, that manifest your results. It's a takeoff on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a takeoff on a framework of my mentors, Jen Barley and Karen Sullivan. It's an alteration of that. And it also, its bases very much lies in the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl. Now, I just learned less than a week ago that a quote that I always share that's been attributed to Frankl actually isn't Frankl.
Oh, really?
It's a Stephen Covey quote that encapsulates Viktor Frankl's work that the Viktor Frankl Foundation does, shall we say, bless. And so
Oh,
here's
okay.
the Covey quote that's at the basis of my work, which is, between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Mm,
In this space lies our freedom to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So
mm,
Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, a neurologist, and a psychiatrist. And so I come at life having gone through some pretty dark days myself, understanding that everything that happens in life is neutral. Everything that happens to us is actually a simple fact. It's the thought that we put to the occurrence that drives an emotion, that creates an action, that ultimately manifests the results of your life.
mm.
And so that's where this team framework comes from. And when I work with individuals and or teams, that's where we start, because we got to understand, or at least acknowledge, that our interpretations of events in our lives may not actually be wholly accurate. And person A is going to look at it differently than person B. So when I work with a team, one of the hallmark things that I've created, that I create rather with the team, which again, thanks to Jen and Karen, is an alliance where we sit down and we talk about what kind of practice do we want to show up to every day? How are we going to show up when there are challenges? And how are we going to keep each other accountable?
Mm.
It's a literal document that's created that gets plastered on the wall. We land on a safe word. Most of the time it's pineapple. Don't ask me why. And when something happens, we all, despite background, education, etc., have a cornerstone to go from, because we have an agreement that if we feel that these hallmarks are being violated, we have permission to put up our hand and go, hey, I'm not feeling great about it. Let's talk about it. And it can change the face of any practice or business, any team, really.
That's so powerful. Just breaking that down, that there's a space in the moment from stimulus to response.
Yes.
And oh man, there's so much you could go deeper on that. I feel like with self development and
100%.
yeah,
100%. The other thing I want to say about team is, how do you deploy that, right? So team is a
right.
concept. So I view in my mind's eye team almost as a globe kind of orbiting and moving around and pulsating. And in the center of it is another concept that is being debuted in my book. And it's another acronym. I think you can tell I like acronyms. It's NBCA. So when you have a thought, when you feel an emotion, when you're doing an action that somehow you're doing without even thinking about it, you need to notice what you're doing. You need to pause, to honor Viktor Frankl, and breathe. That's the B. You need to commit between your ears to a different result or manifestation. And then you need to act. That's why it's NBCA, because just because you commit to something between your ears doesn't mean it actually happens with your lips, your fingers, or your toes. So NBCA is the tool at the core of team to help us navigate through our world a little differently.
That's so powerful. That's so good. I remember first time I heard that our industry, the dental industry, is one of the top dealing with mental health
Yeah.
and suicide and these
Yep.
things. I was shocked to hear that. And I've since, this was years ago when I found that out, but since we've lost, some key people in our industry, some really great people, a lot of them,
Yes.
and so this is an important topic. It's an important to talk about with, when we're at work and we're in the chair and we're dealing with the stresses of team and patients and the drama that patients bring in, and then compound that with inflation and what's happening with overhead and expenses going up and team, wanting to be paid more and insurance that's, choking the industry from a revenue standpoint. It's like we dentists are dealing with a lot. And
Absolutely.
I think at least the resources from what I'm hearing that you provide and the training and the coaching and this, the frameworks, these acronyms are great. They're great.
Yeah. Well, just to put some additional data to what you just said, I mean, dentists are 17 times more likely to commit suicide than the general populace. I learned from my dear friend and business partner, Dr. Kyle Stanley, that, according to ADA data, we're 2.5 times more likely, or we have 2.5 times the incidence than the general populace of depression, anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. And so Kyle and I have actually joined forces, and we also conduct what I believe is the only in-person mental wellness course for dentists on the planet. And we're hosted by one of the biggest dental labs on the planet, which is Glidewell. They've opened up their hearts and minds and facilities to us. And so they hosted us last November. We're going back to be with them in May. And I really want to give them a shout out for supporting this. And they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And I want to, thank Jim Gladwell and also Stephanie, the CEO, Stephanie Goddard, the CEO of Glidewell, for opening their doors and hearts to us. So
that's phenomenal. That's great. The work you're doing, that's great. Okay, so let's transition this a little bit. So team, you've got a wealth of knowledge of working with teams and individuals and coaching. Let's talk about leadership training and what it is that you help leaders do, especially even in the practice, right? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because team is at the core of everything I do. And one of the things I say as an observation, not a judgment or a criticism, is that we need to understand something. The doctors, office managers, hygienists, to some degree, from an experiential, educational, and financial resource perspective, can be in a very different life space than the team. And that there alone breeds differences in interpretation of neutral fact. And so I love diving into the areas of emotional intelligence with my leaders, as well as conducting a 360 emotional intelligence debrief. In other words, conducting the scientific assessment about how the doctor looks at him or herself, how the team looks at the doctor, and their peers. So if it's a general dentist, it would be their specialist. If it's a specialist, it would be the opposite, the restorative dentist. And we get a window into the emotional intelligence of that leader. Now, emotional intelligence is not some woo-woo, mushy-gushy topic. We're talking about things such as stress tolerance, decision-making, expression, self-regard, and how those interplay. It's almost like a balance, like a scale, where if we are overfit, as we like to describe it, in one area, that can affect another. So how can we leverage these levers of, stress tolerance, decision-making, self-regard, self-expression, empathy, to our benefit to help navigate, to be a better leader, so that you're not running into the situation where you're sitting there frustrated, where you feel like your team doesn't have that level of ownership over given tasks. And my first question would be, okay, well, how have we communicated this? How have we set this as a standard? How have we established ownership of the patient experience as a cornerstone of our culture? So my coaching and my leadership guidance is really truly between the ears. I'm not going to sit there, although I can talk to you about how to drive, production and efficiency and how to answer the phone, because those are all similar verbal skills to interacting, because it's human conversation. What I focus on is the stuff that not a lot of people do, which is how we're processing and then therefore communicating our thoughts to make sure everybody's rowing in the same direction. So that's where I believe I shine, and that's where I believe I'm the most effective.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of consultants out there who have the process things, the tangible, here's your checklist, here's your metrics to focus on, here's how you do assignments, and here's how you hire. But I think you're hitting on something that's profound, and that's like the why behind everything. Like, what's like, if I'm feeling this stress at work, or if I'm feeling this stress with my team, what meaning am I attaching to that? And how is that driving my decisions and actions?
Absolutely.
Relative to all the operational stuff that's out there, right?
Yeah. And to this end, let's talk about delegation for just a quick sec, because that's actually one of the lessons in my online course. And it's there for a very specific reason, because we as dentists and leaders, I think many leaders rather, don't delegate very effectively. And so I have an entire framework that starts with a conversation that would go something like this. So Brett, I'd love for you to take over this task because I really think you can do a really, really good job. And the truth of the matter is, you're being successful at this task is as much about you understanding and doing as it is me explaining what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. So I just want you to know, and let's talk about the idea that as I'm explaining, I'm going to ask you to kind of check in and let me know what you're feeling and what you understand. And by the way, as we go through in a week, a month, a year, I'm going to be checking in and asking you. And I want you to understand this is not micromanaging. This is as much about making sure I'm doing for you what I need to do as it is you doing what you need to do for our practice or business. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, have a conversation.
It sets up a completely different conversation,
versus here's your job, do the thing.
Yeah. And it's okay to compliment and be effusive when you're starting, because why did you pick that person to do that task to begin with? I'm going to assume you think they can do it. So why not compliment them? You're sitting there for a reason. So talk about that reason.
Yeah, that's powerful. So I imagine there's this, along with a lot of other golden nuggets inside your online training that you're talking about. Leadership Mastery is the name of the online course, and you should go check it out. Dr. Mendelson, thank you for coming on today. Before we part ways, I always ask everybody, what's one big golden nugget? Like one, if you could help a doctor understand this one domino, that if they could just push that domino over, it knocks all the other dominoes down. What would be that one thing that, from your perspective, is transformational in that way?
It's a golden nugget question that you can ask yourself, and it's real simple. And the question is this: how true is that? And so you have a team member that comes in late. They're taking advantage of me. How true is that? It may be, but it may be that their parent is ill and you didn't even know. That patient is in a bleep. How true is that? Maybe they're just so afraid they can't see straight. You're driving to the office and someone cuts you off. That jerk. How true is that? Maybe they just didn't see you. It's a transformative question.
Yeah, I like that. How true is that? I'm definitely going to use that. Well, thank you so much, everybody. You got to go check out, if you haven't heard of Dr. Mendelson already, his reputation precedes himself. He's phenomenal, as you can tell. Go to his website. I'm going to put it in the show notes. We've got a link for you. that will not only give you to his website, but also his courses and contact information, all of that. So check out the show notes for that. It's Linktree/Metamorphosis Coaching. But again, thank you, Dr. Mendelson, for coming on today. Thank you for the valuable conversation and insights and all the good you're doing, all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you next time on the Marketing 32 Show.